Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan St. John. I'm going to be your guide today, and we are going to talk about financial reporting in Acumatica. We're going to be talking about two different types of financial reporting in Acumatica. One being pre-formatted reports, such as a trial balance and transaction detail reports. These are pre-formatted and are not that flexible in the way of the way you present it. Then we will be talking about financial statements such as a balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow statements that allow you the flexibility of presenting the data in any number of different manners, whichever suits the occasion. So first, we're going to start with take a look at the trial balance. And so we're going to start here with the trial balance summary. You get a prompt screen, and it's going to tell you, first thing you do is prompt you for your period that you want to report in. Over here, anything that has a star in it is a required field. So if you only have one ledger, then we can modify the report to the point where it's not going to ask you every time for the ledger. And if company and branch is not appropriate for your situation, then we can also eliminate this field. So all it does is ask you for the period that you want. Once you select your period, click on Run Report. And here you have your trial balance for the period of December 2019. So it's basically presented as a beginning balance, the net debits, net credits, and the ending balance for the year. Now, one thing I want to show you and bring to your attention here is on the left-hand column, you see the account numbers are in blue with an underline. Anytime you see this blue underline, a field, if you will, that these are what's called hyperlinks. By clicking on these, any of these, you're going to drill down into that particular field. And I happen to choose something that wasn't, didn't have any data. So let me choose something here. Okay, so here it drills into the company savings account, and it shows all the transactions in that particular account for the time period specified. And then I bring to your attention, once you're in here, you can always change the period you're looking at. You can look at all the transactions for that account in the entire year, and specify your date range. You can be very specific date range and narrow it down to a week, narrow it down to a day, all by changing your parameters here. Okay, so this is your trial balance. You also have transactions for the period and transaction per account, which we just looked at those basically, so I'm not going to run those reports for you right now. The second type of financial reporting that Acumatica presents to you is your standard financial statements, balance sheets, P&Ls, and statements of cash flow. And these all have the capability of customization for you. So we're going to come in here, report definitions, and the report definition is where you put it all together. So you have, if we're looking at a balance sheet, all we do is click on that. And for those of you that have been around long enough to remember the old FRX financial reporting system, you'll find that the look and feel is very similar to what FRX did before Microsoft retired FRX. So anyhow, we have the row sets and we have a column set. These are your primary two tools for defining what you want. Okay, this is the row set is a balance sheet, and in here is where you define how you want your rows to appear. You want them to appear in summary based upon your account class. So you want one number for cash and cash equivalents. Do you want one number for your receivables? Do you want one number for your short-term investment? So on and so forth. And you define all that right here. So you come in here and you have your headings, assets, the type, it's a column, a caption. Coming forward, what style? Well, this is a caption here, a header formation. So you want to make this bold. And then from here, a line break. So after you get past this, you break down to the next line. How big do you want it? Okay, this is 18 point. So you want it a little bit bigger than the rest of it, whereas your regular items are all 16 point. You go through and you define this. The second row, row 101, is intended to be a blank row. And then you have your next row, 103, is your current assets. Okay, so we're grouping this based on current assets. And then we get into the actual GL data. So looking at cash and equivalents, we see the type is GL. That tells the system we want the general ledger data. And then we come over here to cash asset. This is the data source. So we're telling the system we want all the accounts in that's classified as a cash asset. Now we do have the flexibility to bring this out further. And if I do not want any account, individual accounts itemized in this line, then I just leave my expand at nothing. I also, if I want to see each individual account under cash assets, I would classify this as account. I can take it a step further and separate everything by sub account also. And then from there, we just click OK and you move on to the next line. So as you're designing your report, the shortcut is usually to start with your data sources and organize your report that way. And then you can decide on any given one, any given row that you want to see it as a individual, as a line item, things like that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change here. And I'm going to say, I want to see this by account. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. And then from here, I'm going to indent this line just to set it apart a little bit, an additional 5 spaces. So this column you see is indent, and the individual line items, and indenting it by 10 spaces. And this one I'm specifically going to indent it by an additional 5 spaces to set it apart a little bit. Okay, now from here, I'm going to save and close, and I'm back into my report definition. I'm going to look at the column set in a second. So what I want to do now is I want to take a look at my handiwork and see what I've done. So I come over here to preview. And we wait. Okay, we're going to have the prompts. Oops. I have big hands, I hit lots of buttons at one time. And then we're going to run our report. And this is your balance sheet. And notice here how for the cash equivalents, cash accounts, I've detailed it by line item for every single cash account. However, my receivables, inventories, my WIP and everything is all done as a consolidated line item. So all the accounts are consolidated into one line. Any questions? Okay.
No, Dan, I'm monitoring the questions and there's nothing there.
Great. Okay. So then we come over here, and once again, we have the famous blue lines, blue hyperlinks that I mentioned before. And you can take any one of these and click into it. And it's going to drill down first down to the account level. So I had chosen the receivables line item, and there are 2 accounts involved with the receivables. Only one of them has any current transaction history. So I can still drill into that account further by displaying the transactions. And now here's all the transactions that affected the receivables account during the time period specified. Okay, this is all part of the flexibility. Okay, you can effectively make your financial reports look like anything that you want to make them look. Okay, the next thing is the column set. Now, in my experience with the financial reporting, is that the row set is the one that's going to be require the most work and the most thought process for, how do I want my line items to be presented? Do I want to present this account number plus that account number, a range of account numbers, or I want to do it consolidated and just have to give some thought to that. When you get to the column set is where your creativity takes over, because this is how you decide how you want the report laid out on the paper or on the display. Okay, so here in this case, we have column A is going to be the descriptions, and column B is going to be the GL data. And you can come in here and you can specify how wide the column is going to be, how much you want to, if you need to cut off, if you have large descriptions in your chart of accounts, and then how wide do you want your data column to appear. You also have the ability to format how you would like your data to appear right here in the formatting window. Some people like commas, some people don't like commas, some people prefer everything. You can round it all the way down to the whole dollars if you like, round it down up to the thousands, whole thousands, millions, so on and so forth. So you can make all these choices at the column level and come on further down. Do I want extra spaces in there? Yes or no? Do I want to suppress the line? Printing control, do I want to print this column? So conceivably, you could have a column that you don't want to display, but you want to include as part of a calculation. And then at the very bottom, you have what kind of data do I want to see? So we want ending balance because it's the nature of a balance sheet. So the ending balance as of the period that we're looking at. And so all this puts it all together and decides how you're going to see it. Now, I'm going to show you something here to show you how the creativity can take over. And let's look at a P&L. Okay, so we have our same row sets. Okay, and for my purposes, I've got everything broken down. So let's say for the sake of argument, I want to see my sales broken out. So I'm going to come over here to my data source, and I want it broken out by account number. And I'm going to leave this alone for the moment. And so I'm going to come in here. Now let's look at the column set. Like I said, this is where the creativity is going to come into play. So here we have column A, which is your description. Column B, they've chosen in Acumatica to have the year to date. And then column C is going to display the period to date. Okay, so we have this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this report for you. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on preview. I can accomplish the exact same thing from the main menu and clicking profit and loss or whatever report I want. Okay, so in this case, I want to stay in my definitions. I'm going to click on preview. I'm going to set my date. And we'll run the report. And we have our revenue, our P&L, and we have period to date and year to date. Okay. Now, one thing that Acumatica has done, which I always found interesting, is they chose to put year to date in front of the period to date. And most financial reports that I've encountered over the years, you always have period to date first and year to date second. So let's humor me and I'm going to go back and I want to change this to display the way I would like to display it. Okay, so simple matter of opening up my column set, and I'm going to come down here and change this from ending balance over here, and I'm going to change it to turnover. And I'm going to change this one from turnover to ending balance. Okay, now the only other thing that I have to do here is let's change my label. And done. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to save my work, and let's go preview the result. And we'll run the report, and it's as simple as that. I've changed my the order of my columns to present period to date first and year to date, which is the way I'm accustomed to seeing it. Okay, so I would stress to you that the columns is where you're going to be the most creative. So the columns can very easily be where you are defining a trend report. So you would just simply come down here and over here, tell it what period, right here. So I could call this period 1, ending period 1. And then on the next column, I go to make this period 2, so on and so forth. And I can effectively have a trend report with very little effort. Okay. One thing I did not do that I should have done at the beginning of the session was, if I'm going to make changes in my columns or something like that, I should always copy it to a new column set, and I give it a name. Let's call this PL test. Oops. Test 1, and like that. So now, if I don't like what I did, I don't have to worry about undoing it. I just do all my changes here and P&L test 1 in this case. And what can happen is, one of the nice things about the Acumatica idea is, in here, I have a definition of all my row sets. I have a definition of all my column sets. So I can have an unlimited number of row sets defined to suit different needs, different purposes. I can have an unlimited number of column sets to suit whatever need that I have. With statement of cash flows, a 12-month rolling P&L, 12 months static P&L for the current year. Take a look at the 12-month rolling here. And so you're being period ending, you have all your columns labeled up here, and then you have your turnover, -1, -2, -3, so on and so forth. And it will basically present everything correctly. Okay, so the Acumatica financial reporting does allow you maximum flexibility in presenting your financial reports, whether it's to a board of directors, of powers that be, to public shareholders, anything you need, you do have the flexibility to present that. The next thing I wanted to show you is the flexibility here. I'm going to run the report, and all of the reports are exportable. Send it out to Excel. Yeah, that's good. And I can double click on it down here. And it's coming up on my other screen, so bear with me a moment. And this is the output into Excel. Then you can make it look the way you like to make it look. And from a layout perspective, throw in some logos in there and, make it as presentable as you need to make it presentable. Okay, everybody got that? Where we have the ability to export, I can export it as a PDF. We can send these and we can email them out to a recipient, a group of recipients. And one other thing I wanted to show you is grouping. So right here, we have a button, an icon to allow me to group. And for those of you that have multiple companies or branches, we have the ability to narrow this down. So if you have designed the report so that it's not company specific or branch specific, I can come in here. By default, you're looking at the consolidated report. I can come here to look at a specific company. Here's product company, and here's the services company. Or I can look at specific branches and break it down as much as I like. Okay, so this is one of the more powerful aspects of the way Acumatica allows you to build your reports and break it down to the levels that you want to see without a great deal of, without having to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so that is our financial reporting for Acumatica. Lisa, do we have any questions going out there?
We do not. One thing that I wanted to bring out is, as flexible as the system is, can you kind of tell people where it works, where they might need another, limitations in case they might need to go to a different application?
In my experience, there's not a whole lot of limitations. I have experienced some time in doing balance sheets. Let me just redo this here, and we'll run the report. I had a customer ask me a long time ago that they wanted to see the balance sheet in a tabular form. So they had their data in one column and all their subtotals in the next column, and then possibly the total assets in a third column like that. And I did have a lot of difficulty getting that done. So that's not as straightforward. It can be done, but it requires a little bit of work. And in my experience, if you are exporting a report to Excel, the output tends to be pretty plain vanilla, okay? And so that if you want to make it real pretty and add colors and things like that, there are times when you might want to consider a BI product where you're designing your reports in Excel to begin with. But for the most part, I find very, very few limitations of the Acumatica internal or built-in methods, tools for building financial reports.
Okay, so in case everybody, I'm sure everybody got it, but Dan just presented a tool that allows you to customize your financials. You could customize the look of it, how, and based off of what Dan has right now in front of us, the left-hand side is our row. It's our assets, it's our current assets, it's how we want that to be presented. And then if you look at column D, that's a perfect example, and again, there's only one here, but that's a perfect example of the column information that's being brought in, whether it's year to date, whether it's, you could even do a quarter if you wanted, or just month to date information. So you can tailor the information. You can tailor your financials. When Dan brought up the information. We saw that there's drill down capability, as well as we're able to export the data. Even though Dan just got out of that really quick, a lot of the times you could export information to Excel and it really does not lay out well. That really laid out exactly the way how we have it. It came out exactly into Excel and it wasn't all over the place. A lot of the times you'll export it out to Excel and it's really not laid out nicely. On this one it is.
Okay.
Okay. Again, if anybody has any questions, and of course, as Dan pointed out, in addition to the Acumatica training, you could always come to Net at Work if you want, one-on-one training. If there are additional questions after this that you think about after we finish the webinar, we're always here for you. So Dan did the presentation. My name is Lisa Margulies, and I am the consulting manager. And then in addition to that, we have Stuart Blumenthal, who's the practice director for Acumatica at Net at Work. We thank you so much for participating and joining us today. We hope that it was informational and you got some good output out of this. And we look forward to additional training in the future. Thank you so much for joining us.